confrontation in front of Nutley's Christopher Columbus statue. The situation got so intense, police physically separated the two groups with barriers and their bodies. As the chanting and the counter-chanting got too close for comfort.
The Columbus Day thing has always been a little bizarre to me. Here's an American hero who is neither American nor a hero. He was thrown in prison for, in the words of one famous historian, being an asshole, and spent the rest of his life trying to rehabilitate his asshole reputation. But his reputation really wasn't rehabilitated until the 1890s. Almost 400 years after his death. He then morphed into an Italian-American hero, even though he wasn't Italian. Italy didn't exist as a country in 1492.
Anti-Italian discrimination.
He was from the city-state of Genoa.
What's the problem with Genoa?
The north of Italy always have the money and the power. They punish the south since hundreds of years. Even today, they put up their nose at us like we're peasants. I hate the North. I never liked Columbus.
He mostly helped Spain, which, last time I checked, wasn't Italy. So Columbus Day has become Indigenous Peoples Day, which is better, but kind of a weak compensation for genocide. The Columbus Day battle is really a battle about how we frame United States history. Are we a country built by brave settlers, or was it built by genocide and slavery? I don't think studying Columbus could really help us answer this question. You know what might help, though? Studying the first permanent English-speaking settlement in present-day U.S. territory. Spain had a real glow-up after Columbus landed in the Americas in 1492. Columbus thought he was in Asia, but Spain later realized, nope, not Asia. We'll keep it anyway so we can convert Native Americans to Catholicism and take their gold. They built an empire, got rich, and even their kings developed alpha male Chad jaws. Queen Elizabeth I of England was a real hater of Spain's success. She had an idea. Why don't we find Asia for realsies? In the meantime, let's rob Spain's gold ships and convert Native Americans to Protestant Christianity. Isn't it time for us Protestants to have a glow-up of our own? This is the exact message she sent over group chat to her roster of young men. She sent many of these young men to the Americas, telling some of them to find a route to Asia and the rest to find a nice pirate trap house from which to rob Spain. The route to Asia didn't go so well, but they found a nice spot for a pirate trap house. They named it Virginia in Elizabeth's honor, who was known as the Virgin Queen, which everyone on the group chat knew to be true. So they came back and set up a pirate trap house in Virginia. And they all disappeared. What happened? We don't really know. It's called the Lost Colony of Roanoke, and someone could do an entire video just about that. But this is a video about Jamestown. Queen Elizabeth died, and as a virgin, she didn't have a child to take over her throne. Her nephew James I became king instead. He wasn't too interested in America, but many important Englishmen were. They formed a company called the Virginia Company and got James's permission to try again on the whole building a colony thing. The company wrote a charter that clearly explained its goals. To make a colony of our people in that part of America commonly called Virginia, which are not now actually possessed by any Christian prince or people. Meaning, take the land before Spain gets it. Spain already had Florida. The English didn't want them creeping up the coast. The charter also said that they will tend to the glory of His Divine Majesty in propagating of Christian religion to such people as yet live in darkness and miserable ignorance of the true knowledge and worship of God. Meaning, we're gonna Protestant Christianity the hell out of the Native Americans. And they would dig, mine, and search for all manner of mines of gold, silver, and copper. They would start their Bitcoin mining arc, or just regular coin mining arc. So, in December of 1606, the Virginia Company sent 3 ships, the Discovery, the Godspeed, and the Susan Constant, to build a colony in Virginia. 144 men in total made the trip, mostly gentlemen landowners and skilled craftsmen, along with the ship's crews. It was April 1607 by the time they landed on a sandy shore somewhere in modern-day Virginia. They were tired and thirsty. A small group of them went ashore to find sources of fresh water and possibly dig for gold. They wandered around the wooded landscape until nightfall, but were unaware they were being stalked. On their way back to the ship, 5 Native American warriors popped out of the darkness and fired a flurry of arrows at them. One Englishman was shot through both hands. Captain Christopher Newport fired his musket in the general direction of the arrows. The attack came to an end, and the English hurried back to the boats to treat their injured men.
Never get out of the boat. Absolutely goddamn right.
But they would need to leave the boats at some point if they wanted to establish a permanent colony. They gingerly scouted the land during daytime hours, often seeing Native Americans in the distance who ran away when the English tried to make contact. Were the English scouting or being scouted? They finally found a source of fresh water in the form of a river, which they named after King James. They even made contact with some Native American groups who were willing to share their food, a welcome relief to the hungry settlers. Through conversations with the Native Americans, they learned that a chief named Powhatan kinda ran things in that part of Virginia. In fact, Powhatan had built a respectable empire through a little bit of war and a little bit of intermarriage. Even the English eventually referred to all the Native Americans of the area as the Powhatan, meaning Powhatan's people. He was that dude, and the English knew they would have to deal with him at some point. But they would prefer not to deal with him right now. They were still too weak from their long journey and still homeless. After much consideration, they built a settlement at the mouth of the James River, which they called Jamestown. They chose this area because it was out of the way of the Native Americans, who they did not want to antagonize. It was also on the coast, which allowed them to keep an eye out for Spanish ships. Spain knew the English were mucking around in Virginia, and the English knew if they saw Spanish ships on the horizon, it would be their ass. But where could they go? Whether it was from the woods in front of them or the sea behind them, death could appear at any minute. But the biggest enemy of the English settlers turned out to be themselves. They didn't build any farms, and the housing they built was temporary. Instead, they spent their energy digging for gold and asking Native Americans where the gold was. The only food they were getting was coming from trade with Native Americans, who were really taken with the English's metal tools and gems. There were instances where Native Americans tried to take tools without permission, which usually led to arguments. How dare they try to take property they didn't trade for? This came down to misunderstanding. Native Americans didn't view property the same way as Europeans. What Europeans saw as trade, the Native Americans saw as more of a free exchange of gifts and tribute. Private property was, by and large, a foreign concept to Native Americans. This was just the beginning of the misunderstandings between the two sides. They both saw each other as lazy. Back in Europe, men did the farming and tool making, while in the Americas, women did these things. How could Native American men sit back and let their women do this? Weren't they ashamed? In reality, Native American men did the hunting and fighting, causing them to leave their wives for days or weeks at a time. Native American men saw English men as lazy. Why did they sit around all day looking for gold instead of hunting? They didn't even know how to use a bow and arrow. Also, what's with the clothes? Native Americans saw English men wearing layers of fabrics and armor. English men saw Native Americans wearing barely anything at all. Were they not ashamed? Where was their modesty? In reality, Native Americans needed to travel light because they were always on the move. They'd settle in an area one season and move on somewhere else to let the plants and animals replenish themselves for the next season. They set controlled fires to clear the way for new plants to grow and to prevent seasonal wildfires. The entire ecosystem of the Americas was shaped by Native American activity over hundreds and thousands of years. Europeans rarely ever moved because they lived in permanent homes with farms. They could have heavy tools, which helped them farm, and heavy clothes, which helped them get through cold European winters. Europeans saw the Native American way of life as wasteful. Why would they roam hundreds of miles of land when they could stay in one place? But the evidence suggests that Native Americans worked fewer hours during the day while extracting more nutrients from the environment than Europeans. On the whole, Native Americans were taller and generally healthier. Europeans had diseases that were unknown to Native Americans, especially smallpox, which spread in areas where many people and animals lived near each other. And the Jamestown settlers didn't even bother to build farms. They figured they could survive from trade until they found gold, at which point they could buy everything they needed. Most of the Jamestown settlers were gentlemen and skilled craftsmen, two groups of people who knew nearly nothing about farming. They came to America to live like kings, not work in fields like peasants. Very few of them noticed that the Native Americans didn't seem to carry any gold at all. They figured the Native Americans were too ignorant to know what gold was, not that there was any gold to be had. They confirmed this when they started pulling gold rocks out of the James River, rocks that turned out not to be gold at all, but mica. The Native Americans noticed that the English were kind of obsessed with the James River. That's because some of them thought there might be a chance the river could lead them to Asia and all the cool trade taking place there. On one occasion, a group of Native Americans offered to show some of the English all that the river had to offer. They really took their time showing the English around. What great hospitality. Wait a minute. Some of the English got suspicious and hurried back to Jamestown. Sure enough, they saw Jamestown on fire and wounded Englishmen being attended to. It turns out that the Native Americans had attacked them. The whole James River tour was a distraction. The only thing that ended the attack was cannon fire from one of the English ships. This was a real coordinated plan. Someone must have done the coordinating. Could it have been this Chief Powhatan they've heard so much about?